Hi everyone. Just keep on talking and having pizza. Yeah, we're gonna start. There's enough people, so I'm just gonna start my first little part, and then we'll see if we switch actually speakers position, because the cola guys are not here yet. So then worse, we'll do the day 2 stuff, and they're gonna get in. So I know they're coming. So just scared of water or something. So, and it's still raining like crazy. So all right. So thanks for braving the crazy weather, and we'll get going. So welcome to the Q3 meetup of OpenStack Montreal. Thanks everybody for showing up, we'll go through the agenda. So today there's a few intros and things I'm gonna go through. Talk a bit about Pike. And then we'll hit, hopefully, Cola, either at that order or after, when they show up. We have a small break, and then Dirk, also from Dynatrace, is going to talk about day 2 operation. So even though he's working for Dynatrace, it's not a vendor talk. It's a community, open source, and then, yes, their solution also. So you'll have Nagios, Elastic with Monasca, and all those things together. So it's really nice. So just a quick thank you to our sponsors, everybody who paid for pizza, Dynatrace, Juniper, CloudOps for paying for my time to do those meetups, and we're always looking for sponsors in Montreal. So if you ever are interested in having your logo in our slide at every meetup, website, and everywhere, just feel free to reach out. And we can get talking. It won't ruin your company. I can tell you that. It's really not super expensive. Some updates and speakers for those who don't know me. Stacy Verano, I'm the director of OpenStack Solution here at CloudOps. That's whatever things I've been doing, working for CloudOps for 2.5 years. Doing some OpenStack since SX really a bit, Folsom, and then Grizzly for real, and also lately OpenStack Mentor through the new program for the foundation, trying to pair people to help people gain knowledge of OpenStack for business and technology reason also. So they're pairing you up with somebody. So I'm paired with a lady from Bangalore. She's working for Hitachi. She's doing some OpenStack there, and so trying to get things going and some areas that she wants to learn more. So it's super interesting, and it's going rather well. So that's for me. We have a new meetup co-org who's, all right, there he is on the couch. So Mohamed from Vexos is also for this cycle PTL, Puppet OpenStack, if I'm not mistaken. So if it's not working, here's the guy. If you're doing Puppet OpenStack. But yeah, so congrats on the PTL. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but yeah. And also thanks for giving infrastructure to the infrastructure project of OpenStack also. So we saw that yesterday in Ottawa meetup, where we saw a few things where it comes to the core project of OpenStack and the way they're building things. They need resources, and Vexos is one of them, so it's cool. So thank you for that. Our speakers, we're gonna, if they show up, I'll say it enough that they're gonna show up. So we have Gaetan Farid from Ormuco is gonna talk about Cola in their production environment. And second speaker, like yesterday, I won't say his last name. I'm always really bad with that. So Dirk from Dynatrace will start talking about day 2 operation. So everything you need once you turn that little key on your cloud, like monitoring, getting all those metrics, that's what he's going to cover. And also, yes, like at the end mentioning is what Dynatrace actually does in that big ecosystem of day 2 tools that are out there. So we have a new OpenStack release, Pike. That's shiny and new. So it's the 16th release, was released on August 30th. It's going to be followed by Queens and Rocky. There's some new things. There's like a bucket list of, told you that if I say their name enough, they're going to show up. They're showing up. So hi guys. Feel free, there's pizza, beer in the back, so you're right on time. So yeah, so there's a bucket list of everything that's new in OpenStack and when it comes to all the components. So just like in Nova itself, there's just a few pointers that there's some Some new services that, well, a node can remove itself if it feels that it's unhealthy. You can prevent an instance from consuming of all your resources. Also, there's a scheduler int, like a where, which is basically like you can tell if that workload is not PCI certified, like payment card industry and everything, you can prevent it from going into specific areas where it's not supposed to go. So that's something that's there in Nova. So it's quite good if you're having a public cloud and you need to be PCI certified and keep that certification. So that's Nova. Neutron has a 0 downtime upgrade from Okata. So if anybody does it, let me know. Sure, everybody's gonna be super interested in knowing that it's actually working well. Some improvement in stability, some QoS on DVR improvement, and there's a support for DNS domain set up per Neutron port. So if you have more than one Neutron port before, it was like all on the same DNS domain. Now you can have more than one. And in Cinder, there's the revert from snapshot. There's also in the under Cinder condition, probably shared storage, or if you're using LVM or Ceph, you can actually stretch a volume that's attached live. So, but your mileage may vary depending. So it might be like vendor related. So maybe NetApp says yes, it works, and then another vendor say, "Yo, no way, that's not working." So yeah, that's what's going on with Cinder. Horizon, for those who are using Horizon and are not just all CLI. There's the new clouds.yaml file. Everybody's used to the OpenRC file. Get your credential, like V2, V3 keystone. There's also now the cloud.yaml for the OpenStack CLI. So basically, it's a new structure. It's a YAML file. So it's you're having block of information. Let's say like, oh, this is my production cloud. This is my dev cloud. This is my QA cloud. The same way you can do that with Kubernetes also when it comes to talking to your cluster. So you just put that like in .config/clouds.yaml. And when you run your CLI, you just either like do like -- OS cloud equal like the cloud I want to talk to, and then it loads the creds and then asks you for a password. So you don't have to maintain a bunch of RC files, which is interesting. So that's something that's new. In the UI, you can create and delete ports in your network. Of course, you could do that before, but now you can do it in the UI. C security group apply to Neutron ports, and a domain dropdown, which I'm still looking for. I don't know where it is. So I was hoping it was like, oh, I have multi-domain for my authentication. I go in, instead of typing mydomain.com, I just go, like, hey, everything has been registered, so just use one. Doesn't look like it's exactly that. So anyway, so I'll keep on looking. If I found it, I'll post it on our Slack channel. Swift, nothing major there besides having globally distributed erasure coding. Swift is super stable, so there's always like just a little list of new things. So it's still there. Ceilometer has support for Manila and SDN controllers when it comes to metrics. Again, Ceilometer project itself has been in flux since Okata, but there's still new metrics coming in, depending on how you're using it, like Mongo or Gnocchi, or if you're using Hey and all the other projects that are now part of the telemetry part. New things in, so that's a grocery list. You can, for Ironic, you can be booting from Cinder volumes. You can access physical network. Well, yeah, physical network awareness, which is kind of good when you're doing bare metal. You have rolling upgrades. Also, there's something in Manila. If you're using CephFS, you can actually now expose them through NFS to Manila, so you can use that. Magnum as the UI when you deploy a Kubernetes cluster. It also has a monitoring stack included when you deploy on Pike. There's way more stuff out there, so I've put 2 links at the back. Of course, yes, those slides will be shared. The bulletin slide share, we'll put the link, put it on meetup.com. It's also going to be, we're streaming live on YouTube right now, so we're recording also, so like people that were scared of the rain could just stay home or at work and just watch us. So just gives us more beer and pizza. So yeah, so you can go, the first link is a video from the OpenStack Foundation. The other one is actually the link for the release itself. So that's for Pike. Next thing that has nothing to do with OpenStack, but still, Luminous is out. So for those who don't know, so side projects from OpenStack, it's not a side project, like it's a storage platform, but it's OpenStack best friend when it comes to storage and a lot of deployment. And a day before OpenStack release, we had the latest Ceph release. So I thought it was of interest, especially because, like I said, they work well together. A few things of note, like the Blue Store engine, which is the new default engine now in Luminous, which is a big thing, and maybe eventually, like Mohammed will tell us if they, when you're done with your upgrade at Vexos, how it goes in production, if it's really that performant, like do you get ×3 and do you still need journals everywhere, or is it, we'll just you'll keep us posted. So yeah, so there's a new the new manager daemon actually that also exposes metrics. So basically, like you could have Prometheus tap into that and get some data out, which is great. And there's a new dashboard which was absent from since the Calamari days. So that's really good, and it's tied into the manager, and all the performance boost that you get with the Blue Store engine. So again, like the OpenStack part, there's a lot of information that's out there. So I've put the link for the release, and since the release, I think every 2 weeks or a week and a half, on the Ceph blog, they've been posting article on all the new function, but it's really like a big blog post telling you exactly what's going on. So it's a really good thing. So one thing that's coming for those who might be interested is OpenStack Days Canada. So it's going to be on October 19th in Ottawa, so at the Nature Museum. So it's a great venue. So if you can be in Ottawa on the 19th, I think the price of admission is really like dirt cheap. So feel free to go visit the site. And last year we had it at the Notman House in Montreal. So the same type of event, targeting around like 300 people, multiple speakers. We'll have some AMA panels, some post-summit, also networking that's going to happen there. So if you feel, well, summit, like OpenStack Days event. So yeah, if you're ever in the Ottawa region and you want to have a good event to go to, so just go on the website and have a look. And like I do every time, like join us on Slack if you're not already on Slack. So Mohammed can answer questions on Magnum and everything else when I'm bugging him. But yeah, it's a great place to actually talk to the people of the community of OpenStack. So either go on, it's an error queue. So like if you're the first one to go in a while, like it takes forever to load the page. But when it's free, you can complain. It's error queue, so just running your Node.js stuff and that's it. So or just take the QR code that's going to bring you there. It's self-registration, so we're not getting your email or anything. You just register, you'll get the link, go in. And there's people from across the country there, so you can ask questions. And we have a bunch of channels for specific topics, so feel free if you have questions. It's that's what it's there for. And we have something similar for even for Kubernetes. They did something for Canada also. So if people have questions, just go there also and ask. So that's my quick intro for me. If you guys are good, or you? All right. Okay. So we'll jump straight to well, we'll let them time to set up, of course, but we'll jump straight to the Arcola topic. So just bear with us a little moment, and when Farid and Gaetan sets up. So thanks. Donc, juste vous assurer que vous ne faites pas de double écho là, sur le micro. Peut-être au pire le micro, mais le reste, ça va. Moi, je vais aller m'installer là-bas.
pas le Wi-Fi. C'est quoi?
Par contre, ça va être chaud parce qu'en fait, on peut pas, tu peux pas ouvrir toi.
Ouais, mais attends, je vais me mettre comme ça. Ok. Non, faut que tu restes appuyé. Vas-y. Ok. Ok. Blue. Ok. Okay. So it's maybe I will take that. Okay. Do you hear me? Yeah, it seems.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, we will start today with Cola, speaking about our experience and kind of feedback that we have since we are using Cola in production. So first, sorry for the English, because we are French speaker from France, so we have a huge accent. We don't speak very well English, so don't blame us. I'm Gaëtan. I'm working for Ormuco since a year now. I'm part of the automation team. So I'm deploying and managing OpenStack platform. I'm using OpenStack since 2012, something like that. So it was normally SX release. So it's now kind of few times that I'm playing with that.
So hi, my name is Farid. So I am working in Ormuco since 2 years now. And unfortunately, I'm working with Gaëtan.
Thanks, Farid.
You're welcome. So what are we doing in Ormuco? So in Ormuco, we deploy and manage public and private cloud. For the public cloud, we have a federated cloud around the world. We also have a custom user interface for the billing and for the federation. We don't use Horizon. We also have 2 main offices, so the headquarters in Montreal, and we have one other office in Seattle. We are using OpenStack in production since 2015, and we are OpenStack powered with RevStack, so we are API compliance with the foundation.
So a bit of context. So I guess everybody here already tried to deploy OpenStack without any deployment tools. So trying to deploy it using manual stuff, bash script maybe, provision the nodes using Razor, using Puppet with custom recipes. And I assume that it failed many times. It was complicated. You suffer about that. And it's the same for operating an OpenStack platform. The day-to-day, it's not very easy. It's not a simple thing to do. You will have to know a bit about sysadmin. You will have to know about storage, about network. And Farid and I, for example, are not very good for network, especially Farid.
Sorry.
So before that, it was kind of a mess.
So in the OpenStack community, a lot of deployment tools are existing. So for example, we have OOO. So maybe some people use OOO.
Yeah, I think this one used OOO. Don't lie.
I never tried.
Marco 2. So other people try Tripro already? You try? Yeah? Okay.
Also, we have Fuel by Mirantis. So I think it's not used.
But I know that Stacy did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's not maintained anymore.
Yeah. And we have OpenStack Ansible. So maybe some people use OpenStack Ansible.
Yeah.
And of course, we have multiple choice, not only these three, but for us, which one will be the best?
So, as you know, I think, from the title of the talk, we are using Cola. So the mission statement of Cola, it's Cola provides production-ready containers and deployment tools for operating OpenStack clouds that are scalable, fast, reliable, and upgradable using community best practices. So it's almost true, almost. So why we choose Cola? As I mentioned before, deploying an OpenStack, so we build only one image, not only one, but we build an image that will be deployed everywhere, and you are sure, almost 100%, you have to be sure 100% that you will have the same contents everywhere. So that is something very good. And another good point of Cola is that it's very simple to use compared to Triplo. I'm sorry, but have to use hit templates and Puppet and stuff like that. I worked for that before, so I use that. And it's complicated. And even Farid were able to have a fast learning curve, and me too. But so yeah, it's very easy to understand. It's mostly Dockerfile and Ansible, so few Python lines of code, but that's okay. So you don't need to be a dev to know how the tool works. This is something different than before.
So some Cola facts. So Cola exists since 3 years now. We are now in the version 5, the Pike version. It's stable since the Liberty version, but I started to use Cola at the beginning of Mitaka, and I was not able to deploy it at the Mitaka release. But it was stable since Newton. They have now 2,040 contributors. 200, sorry, my English. And behind these contributors, a lot of companies. So it's great, like Red Hat, IBM, Fujitsu, Oracle. So Cola have 3 main repositories. So the Cola repositories for the images. So all OpenStack images will be in this repository. So if you want to use this image with your own software, you can do it. We have Cola Ansible for the playbook and roles. And Cola Kubernetes. We don't use Cola Kubernetes yet, but maybe in the future. So it's written in Python, like 10% in Python, and the other it's Ansible and Docker.
So the standard architecture slides, it's not very different of an OpenStack deployment. With Cola, we just need a Docker registry, because we're using Docker, so all the images have to be built and put somewhere. So they are put in a Docker registry. The images will be pulled from this registry on the controller, on the storage node, on the compute, on whatever nodes you want. You will need an operator node. So this node is used mainly for run the Cola commands. So this is from this node that you will be able to deploy your OpenStack, that will be able to reconfigure your OpenStack, upgrade the OpenStack, and even build your Docker images. It's just a simple node. It's just an operating system. It could be whatever you want, Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, SUSE, whatever you want, and you will just have to install Cola using maybe pip install or git clone or whatever you want. The OpenStack nodes, so depending of your architecture, but for us it will be controller nodes, compute nodes, storage nodes, mons for the Ceph, but you could have network for split the load, for example, just what you want as architecture. And because we are using Ceph as a storage backend, it's part of our architecture. But we didn't use Cola to deploy the Ceph cluster. We did it before, and we had kind of issues, mostly because of Docker, again. So this time, for the new deployment, we are using Ceph deploy and just some Ansible playbook to do that correctly. But you have the possibility, if you are not very comfortable with Docker, to deploy it using Cola. But you have to keep in mind that in the next release, this feature will be deprecated. So you will have to get used to know how to deploy a Ceph cluster without Cola.
So how it works? After you install Cola, the first thing you will need to do is to build the images. So you have the big command to build the images. So you will have to specify your registry, which operating system you want to have in your container. So you can have Ubuntu, CentOS, Oracle if you want. Which version of your operating system? We are using Ubuntu Xenial. Which type? You can use the package, so the binary, or if you want, you can use the source to install OpenStack from tarball.openstack.org. You can specify your tag for your image. Here it's 3.0.3, and which component you want to build. Of course, you don't have to execute this command every time if you want to build images. You can have a configuration file, cola build.conf in etc cola, and after that you just have to execute the last command.
And another part, it's to generate the password. So as you may know, OpenStack loves passwords. You will need the passwords for everything. Every time that you will add a component, Glen, Cinder, IODH, Ceilometer, whatever, you will need a password. You will need a password for Memcache, you will need a password for RabbitMQ, you will need a password for Galera, everything. You can do that manually, but it's boring and not very useful. So Cola did create a command for that, the Cola gen password command that will do that randomly. So it will just generate all the passwords and some SSH keys. For example, one of them will be the Nova key used by the live migration for the block storage. And all these passwords are stored in etc Cola directory.
So after that, you will need to build your Ansible inventory file. So for example, if you want to test Cola after the talk, you will probably use all-in-one to deploy OpenStack in only one node. But for production, you will have to use a multi-node Ansible inventory file. So it's an example of the inventory file. So for example, for the control, we have 3 controllers. For the network, so for network children, we will use control. So for the network, it will be the 3 controllers. We have some compute, keystone, and one group for each OpenStack services.
An important part of the Cola deployment is to choose what you will deploy. So by default, there is a file in Ansible group var alls.yml that will contain all the variables used by the Ansible roles. These values are the default value, and they can be override because maybe you don't want to use Barbican and you want to use Mania. So you will not change this file. You will have to create a new file in etc cola globals.yml and change the values. For example, here we will enable Mania and disable Barbican. This file provides other variables like the network, which FQDN you will choose for access your public endpoint, which VIPs you want to use for the internal and for the external. This will be the VIP used by HAProxy and Keep Alive. And you have the possibility to change the interface that will be used, for example, for tunneling, for the storage, for the API, or whatever. This file is pretty well documented, so every time you have almost a description, except for things like enable debug. I think that you don't need really documentation for that. And of course, you can add other value to that.
A cool thing in Cola is to be able to override the Ansible template without changing the upstream code. So for example, if you want to AODH, change the notification topic parameter, you will create the AODH.conf in etc Cola config, add your parameter, and you will override your the notification topic in the Ansible template, and you will deploy this configuration in each AODH server node. Of course, it's not just override. You can also add a new value, a new parameter if you want.
So when you did everything, so you build your Docker images, you generate your passwords, you configure your Cola deployment, maybe you change some OpenStack component configurations. This is the big step. This is the moment when you will deploy your OpenStack platform. So here we have 3 commands. The first one will be most of the time the first command that you will use for deploying an initial OpenStack platform. So you have nothing, you just have your bare metal servers with an operating system. The configuration, the network configuration is done. You will run this command, and at the end of this command, you will have an OpenStack up and running. Normally. Except if you miss something in the configuration, mostly the network configuration, like MTU or stuff like that. The second command line is when you forgot to do something or you wanted to do after an initial deployment. So for example, during our initial deployment, we just deploy an OpenStack platform but without HIT. We missed that maybe, and we just have to change the globals.yml, enable the HIT component to be deployed, and then instead of redeploying all the platform, we will just deploy the missing components. So for doing that, it's almost the same command as the first one, but with the -t option, just meaning tags as Ansible tags, and then we specify the tag that we want to deploy. So here it's HIT. You can see the Ansible playbook, like the very long line. This is the command that is wrapped in the Cola Ansible. So the Cola Ansible avoids you to have to run this huge command. Of course, you can run this command if you want to add extra config files, but you have to be sure of what you're doing.
So you deploy your OpenStack, you are happy, but you missed a configuration. You need to change something. So you need to reconfigure a component. So for example, I want to change the allow resize to same host from false to true. So I create a file in nova.conf, in etc Cola config, like AODH before. I add the new parameter, and after that, I just have to execute the Cola Ansible reconfigure command with the tag nova to reconfigure only nova.
Uh,
I create the file. It was not there. Yeah, he used the default template, so I just add this parameter in this file. Of course, it's just if it's not in the template, or if it's not in the Ansible variable. So you can also change the Ansible variable and do the reconfigure Nova.
And this is the method that you will use to connect Cola to an external self-cluster, for example. you will just add the keys and the self.conf in etc cola config. It's just fragments file. So as Farid mentioned before, it's easy to reconfigure a service, but if you want to change the content of a Docker image, you will have to use a different way, still using cola, but not the cola Ansible reconfigure. You will use the cola build command. So you change something in the Docker file. Here we took the example of HAProxy. So for example, we want a different version of HAProxy for some reason, maybe a newer one, or maybe we just want to have a new package installed in HAProxy, like Vim. So we build a new image with a different tag. So here, the new tag will be 303 for the HAProxy image. Now that we have the image, we have to notify Cola that you will have to deploy a different, a specific tag for HAProxy. For doing that, we just need to add the HAProxy tag for HAProxy, but for Neutron, it will be Neutron tag, etc., etc. So in Cola globals.yml, we're adding HAProxy tag 303. And to deploy this image, we'll just run the Cola Ansible upgrade command with the tags of the component that we want to redeploy, and it will be done. And normally at the end of the process, when you connect on a controller, compute, depending the component you deployed, you run a Docker image, and you should see the difference between the previous tags and the new tags.
So, like I said before, at the beginning, Cola doesn't work, but now it's working, but it still have some stuff to improve. For example, if you want to deploy a new service after your deployment, like I want to have Barbican, so I will do the Cola deploy -t Cola deploy -t Barbican. It will deploy my Barbican, but it will not change the HAProxy configuration. So the listener for Barbican will not be there. So you will have to do the Cola Ansible reconfigure HAProxy after your deployment of Barbican to have Barbican in your HAProxy. So for Neutron, Neutron every time it's funny. In the case of Cola for L3HA, it's a bit complicated, but for example, in a container of Neutron, you will have your Neutron services and the keep alive for the L3HA for each queue router. If you stop the Neutron L3HA container, it will kill your keep alive. So your VIP will stay in your namespace, and your queue router will move your VIP to another namespace. So you will have two VIP at the same time. So you will have multiple active routers. So we opened a bug about that. So right now, what we do, we kill 6 term the keep alive before stopping the Neutron L3HA container. Another funny thing, for Galera, if you want to change configuration in Galera, so you will have to do what we did before, change your configuration and do Cola reconfigure -t MariaDB. If you do that, what the reconfigure do, it changes the configuration on the host, and after that, it restarts the container to apply the configuration in the container. It does that 30%. So if you have three controllers, it will do one by one. But for Galera, it's too quickly. So you will break your cluster. So you will have to bootstrap your Galera after the reconfigure if you do that. So you need to be careful about that. It will be easy to fix, to add a wait time for that, or you can use maybe the limit of Ansible to do that one by one. So yes.
Other thing to improve, it's the merge config Ansible module. So this module has been developed by the Cola team, and it's a very nice module because this is the one that will be used, for example, when Farid wants to change something in AODH or in Nova. So you have your fragment file, and this fragment file will be merged with the default config generated by the templates. This module works only with the OpenStack component. It means that it doesn't work with, for example, Apache, RabbitMQ, with Galera, Memcached, or whatever. So you cannot use the fragment file to reconfigure the infrastructure services of OpenStack. And another thing that could be improved, normally with Kubernetes it should be easier to do that, but right now Cola is locked with Docker, so if you want to try something else, like Rocket for example, you can't, so you're stuck with Docker. With Kubernetes, normally Kubernetes is trying to apply a way to use Docker or Rocket, so that should be solved, but right now it's not.
So our future for the deployment. So Cola helps us a lot to improve our deployment process because we have multiple data centers, so to standardize everything, but we still have some manual action. So what we want to do is to have a build, everything tested, and after that deploy this image everywhere to every data center. And the other things we want to do, for example, we change the keystone configuration. We want to test the reconfigure and stuff like that. And after that, we want to deploy our change to every data center at the same time. So it's what we want to improve in our deployment process.
And hey, this is us in data center. So don't be scared. So now we will do a quick demo.
So yes, so for the demo we created 4 nodes. So 1 operator and 3 controller. The 3 controller will be compute, storage, and everything at the same time. So it's just for a demo. So we will. What we will do, we, for example, try to add it in OpenStack deployment. So we already deployed OpenStack in this node, so normally should work. So we already built the it images before, because the build take a lot of time. Like maybe 20 minutes. That depends of what you have for host, but it can take 20 minutes to build every OpenStack component. Maybe less or maybe more.
Okay, so the screen, I think we don't see everything, but etc., but we don't have any hit controllers. If we check the endpoint, so for Nova, for example, okay. So what we did before, it was just checking that we are proving to you that we are not cheating, and we don't have any hit containers anywhere. The hit service, it's not deployed. And so the endpoint list command is just for showing you that we have a Nova component deployed. But, sorry. And if I'm checking if we have some hit endpoint, normally I just should have an issue. Yeah. So Farid will take the rest.
So yes, so normally it should work, but what we will do is to change the global.yaml and enable it. So we have so this file, it's in the repository. You just have to copy paste in your etc Cola, and yes. So we change the enable it to yes. It was no before, and after that we use the Cola Ansible deploy command with the tag it. So normally it should work.
We didn't try it before.
Yeah, we didn't try before. So we just installed OpenStack, and we didn't try to deploy it. So yes, so maybe you. So it will take some time, not a lot of time, but.
We can see the skipping because we are using the tags. So everything not related to it, except the command part, will be just skipped. So we will see normally things change, like the container creations.
So like in FluentD creates the log folder for the cron. It will also create the endpoint. Yeah. So here for the it services. So the public admin and internal endpoint. After that, normally you should bootstrap the it to update the database. Create the it.
So all the files generated by the template will be on every host hosting the hit container. So it means that on controller 1, 2, 3, or whatever you want, you will have in etc cola a directory per container. So we have it API, it engine, it API CloudWatch, and another one I don't remember. So you will have a directory per container with a it.conf file, and this file will be pushed from the host in the container. So if you change something in the container in etc cola in etc it.conf, this change will be override when you will restart a container. So don't do that. If you have a change to do, do it on the host, restart the container, and the file will be uploaded.
So UP, no error. So normally it is here.
So we can check this time. So something like that maybe. Okay. So no error. So if we are checking here, we should have the endpoints normally.
Yeah.
Okay. So now if we go to one of the nodes, we should see. Now we should have the hit containers. So we have 3 new containers that have been created. We can see that they have been created like less than 1 minute ago and started less than 1 minute ago. So if we go inside the container, it API, for example, we have the hit.conf with every config file. So we can show you the hit.conf even if there is password. So this is
The default configuration from the Cola Ansible template.
Yeah. So from there, normally, I don't know if that will work. Stack. Normally, we should have an answer with that. We don't have the client and stuff.
So yeah, it's not working because, like we said before, the HAProxy was not reconfigured. So what we need to do is to reconfigure HAProxy after the deployment of it.
So if we have a look in the HAProxy configuration, so as I mentioned before, all the configuration files are in the host, in the hypervisor. So here we have all the directory that we have one directory per container. So we have the HAProxy, and if we try to find something related to it in HAProxy, we have nothing. Okay, so we will just reconfigure. Not that.
Yeah, we have also a command to bootstrap the MariaDB cluster if you break it. It's cool. HAProxy.
Yeah, it's the end of the day. Okay, so here, because hit has been already configured, the HAProxy configuration is there, but the container has not been restarted. So what will happen here, normally, Cola will restart the HAProxy container with the new HAProxy listener, with the new hit listener. And normally, the next time that we will run the hit stack list, we should have something. Maybe an error, but something. So we just saw that before he reconfigured the HEPoxy container, but again, because we specify a tag, he skipped everything not related to HEPoxy. Okay,
so yeah, now it's done. So normally if you do OpenStack stack list, it will work. Yeah, well, so nothing because we don't have stack, but
now we have an endpoint and we have an answer from the HIT API. So if we are going back to the demo, to the other hypervisor in etc cola HEPoxy, if we are checking for a listener, we have something here. So let's have HIT. Okay, so here it's the two listeners that have been added by Cola. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, when it works.
Yeah.
When it doesn't, it's not like that. We didn't have the demo effect, so for this time it was working. So if you have questions,
yep.
Just shoot, or if you don't have, you can reach us by email or IRC or Slack even. We are on the what's the name of this? OpenStack. OpenStack Canada. Yeah, so we are there. We are on IRC, Twitter, and mail and whatever. So yeah.
Thanks. So no question? Yes? Yeah, at the beginning, yes. When we use an older kernel, when we start to use Cola, we have this issue. We had this issue. But right now, everything seems to be fine.
Yeah, we had to upgrade the kernel too, and to change the default storage engine of Docker, because by default it's AUFS. I don't know if it's like that we say in English, but in French it's AUFS. By overlay 2, the one that Docker recommends, using UnionFS. So since we changed that, we never had this issue of the hanging container. But before that, yes, we had.
Yeah, and it was really bad because one container was stuck, and the only thing we can do is to restart the host.
Yeah.
But it never happened again.
Because even killing the Docker container process was not working. We just had a kernel panic from the AUFS module. So I assume that's why they deprecated this module, but yeah. Other question?
No, it's more if you try to reconfigure Galera with Cola. Because if you try to do that, like I said, it will restart the container too quickly and the cluster will be break. So you will need to bootstrap your Galera.
It's just an issue with Cola. Yeah. So to fix that, we will have to add like maybe a wait in the task to make sure that we have a master node, to make sure that the two others or the four others or whatever others will be able to sync with at least a node.
But if you don't change the configuration, everything will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't hear you. Sorry. No. We don't have any pacemaker.
They keep alive the HEPoxy.
Yeah, this is the only thing. So yeah. I know that Director Triple O use pacemaker. I think they removed a lot of resources in pacemaker because it was very complicated. And like 2 services run on it. Yeah, they decreased a lot the resources managed by pacemaker because it was, when you had a huge deployment, it was kind of a contention. So yeah, I had this kind of issue in some deployments. From which part? From the control plane part? Normally, you don't need pacemaker to handle the Galera failover because Galera is normally resilient by design. So it do that alone. Even in the director, they remove that because it's not useful anymore. For RabbitMQ, it's the same, depending how you configure your OpenStack component and the kernel to make sure that the default parameter for the TCP timeout, keep alive timeout, it's kind of 5 minutes, I think, something like that. So when you have a RabbitMQ down, and if your component still having a connection open on this host, you will have to wait many minutes before this component try to reconnect to another RabbitMQ. So under or not by pacemaker, if you don't have the correct configuration on the kernel and on the OpenStack component, you will still having this issue. For the keep alive disable alone to manage the VIP. It was not done in director before. I think now there is a keep alive. Maybe now you mentioned that the
Pacemaker or the virtual?
Okay, so we are not using pacemaker for the VIP. We are using keep alive that by default use VRRP to check if the one who has the VIP responding. If it doesn't, another one elect himself like, hey, I'm the new master, so I'm wearing the VIP. And the comeback, so when the node crashed and came back in the cluster, we never had a serious issue with that, except with RabbitMQ. Like RabbitMQ start the services but doesn't start the app. So RabbitMQ is part of the cluster, but the application is not started. But since we had this issue with the beginning of Mitaka, and we changed the RabbitMQ version, and we never had this issue again.
Yep.
I saw that you have open vSwitch containers.
Yeah. Yeah, for Neutron.
And the L3HA, we're using the L3HA, so with a keep alive inside. So, do you have questions about that? No? Okay. Okay, I think, yeah.
Yeah. In the inventory file, you can specify for the compute, you can specify some compute for Nova. You will specify compute 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you will deploy the compute you will deploy Nova in the compute. You can also do that for the storage. If you want, you can also do that for designate. You can say designate. You will have a specific server. If you want, you can do that for Galera, for what you want. Yeah, the group in the Ansible variable permit to do that. Yeah. Every OpenStack services will have an Ansible group.
I'm not sure that 100% of the OpenStack services in the OpenStack GitHub are yet managed by Cola, but most of them are there. Yeah. So, but like Mania, like Barbican are there.
They have also OpenDelight. They have a lot of projects.
They have Mistral. They have Murano. They have a lot of components. So.
But maybe they are not working.
Yeah, some of them are are well maintained than some other. Like Nova, the main one are very well maintained because if it doesn't work, it doesn't make any sense of Cola. But the other one,
like Octavia.
Right now we have some issue with Octavia, deploying Octavia with Cola. It's not working very well. So everything is not perfect. So maybe one day. The Cola container.
Docker container, it's the same,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It's a container. It's Docker. Cola use Docker, so it's the same. For the Cola Ansible command, it just to help us to deploy.
Yeah, because as you saw in the historic of commands that we have, for example, with Cola Ansible.
And also for this command, it's what we use to deploy, because we use Cola to deploy the OpenStack part, but we also use Cola to deploy our own stack, our website and
the portal that
Yeah.
we are using and stuff like that. So when you use Ansible commands, here you can see deploy. You saw previously the reconfigure. You saw the upgrade. So you have too the pre-checks, the post checks. You have the bootstrap, the Galera cluster. So instead of having to type this command every time with changing the playbook,
what
sorry?
dash what? It's
inventory.
Yeah,
Yeah, the inventory file.
yeah.
The Ansible inventory.
It's to add a new
Oh,
parameter.
sorry. Yeah, it's an extra value. It's yeah, when you use that with Ansible, you know, you have a value in a role, for example, like I don't know, CloudOps equal true, and if you don't want to change the content of the file, you can do that directly in CLI. So you can do -e code and the CloudOps true, false, or whatever. You don't have to change the file for doing that directly here. But here we are kind of sourcing a file with a value for doing that.
Yeah, with that we don't need to change the upstream code. We just have to create a new file, global.yaml, and change the file here. But also, if you want, you can change the group var all.yaml in the Ansible repository, the Ansible repository.
Because, for example, the Ansible command will just load this file, but we have this file, and I think that's it. But for example, we are using different files. We have added different files for our stack. So Ansible, except if we change the Python code, will not be able. We don't want to change the Colab upstream code, so that's why we don't change anything in Colab, because if they change something upstream, we want to be able to pull it without trying to solve the conflict or whatever, because we did some change.
It's why, so you don't have to change the upstream, you just have to change your configuration file.
Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, we can
you will
talk about
if
that.
you want to,
Yeah.
we can talk about that, and when you will play with that, you will understand.
I think you had another question. Okay. Okay.
Thanks again, guys.
Si, 45 minutes. Non, c'était 45 minutes. C'était 40 minutes, je crois que c'était 45.
Moi, j'ai commencé plus tôt, fait que ça vous a donné un peu moins de temps. Non, mais c'est parfait. Everybody, just a quick reminder that there's some Dynet Race swag and a little thing you can fill in to win a, what is it? Is that Amazon Echo Dot? So we're going to do the little drawing at the end. So just feel free, just put in the little green ball, and if you're lucky, you'll get it.
All right. So hello from my side. Is this working? Yeah, great. So it's about day 2 operations. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about that. And my presenter is not working. Ah, there we go. So my name is Dirk, and Stacy, refrain from pronouncing my last name, which I totally understand because I'm also not capable of pronouncing it right in English because it's just a German name. So I'm from Austria. This is actually the route I took. And I'm a cloud technology strategist at Dynatrace, which actually means that I get to play around with cloud and container technologies and also get paid for it and do gigs like this. So it's pretty awesome. And yeah, so what Dynatrace does, I don't know if any one of you is familiar with Dynatrace. Maybe show of hands. Have heard of it? Awesome. So Dynatrace is application performance monitoring company. We have a strong background actually from the application side, and then with the rise of container and cloud platforms, we actually saw the necessity to step into that as well. So basically just to fulfill our desire to give you a full stack insight into your applications and into your cloud platforms. But yeah, let's just continue here. So it's day 2 operations. So who came up with this wording, right? So it's like in the beginning it's day 0, and at day 0 you actually like figure out what actually you want to do. So it's a planning phase. You kind of like gather requirements and figure out what you actually wanted to achieve with the cloud platform you're trying to do. Then there's day 1 where you set up, let's make it OpenStack specific, your OpenStack cluster. In the previous presentation we saw a lot of tools which you could actually use for that setup, and I actually pretty much like the color approach, so I definitely look into that one. And after that there is day 2, and day 2 actually deals with like running OpenStack, optimizing OpenStack, ensuring it actually matches the expectations you came up with at day 0. And also, so there's billing, and there's also, of course, monitoring part of it. So you need to, in order to make sure that something matches the expectations, you need to monitor it in order to be able to say if it does or doesn't. And of course, then at the end there is like day 3, when you come to the point where you don't need the OpenStack cluster anymore and you just throw it away and start with something new. So not sure that many people got to day 3. I think most of the people are still stuck with day 2, which is good. And there is one more thing I want to point out to you. So I'm not sure if you were aware of the Cloud Unfiltered podcast. So there was recently an interview with Joshua McCanty. So Josh McCanty is like the founder of OpenStack. So he actually was the guy at NASA that came up with the idea for OpenStack. And it was pretty amazing. So if you have time, here's the YouTube link. I think Stacey is going to share the slide deck afterwards. It's pretty funny what Joshua McCanty, so he's now CTO at Pivotal for Cloud Foundry, right? With what he has to say about OpenStack now. So one of the messages that he said that really stuck with me is that actually OpenStack was just meant to be a set of APIs to control computing resources. And those APIs were never meant to be used by human people, but only like by PaaS platforms like Cloud Foundry or OpenShift or something like that. So yeah. And then like community took over and more people wanted to contribute to it, and yeah, the rest is history, I'd say. But one thing that he also said was, and I have written it down because I tend to forget things, is the goal was always to have OpenStack become as boring as possible, as quickly as possible. And by boring, they actually mean that it just runs. It's a stable platform where you can run your applications on, so your developers and IT people can actually focus on the, let's say, generating value with applications in order to generate revenue through end user participation again. That was one of the goals of OpenStack. And at the end of the day, you still have to make sure that your OpenStack cluster is running. And now we're gonna just talk about a few monitoring tools that can help you in that endeavor. So these are the 4 tools I just wanna briefly touch on today. So it's Nagios, Elastic, Monasca, and Dynatrace. And all of those 4 tools basically have a basic concept they have in common. So there is usually an agent component somewhere that kind of like gathers metrics, gathers data, gathers log files, whatever. And usually there is some kind of server component. And of course, the agent's job is to actually send the data to the server, and the server makes sense of it, presents it in a visual way. Right, so all of these 4 tools basically have this concept in common, just to get that out of the way to begin with. Okay, let's start with Nagios. Who has worked with Nagios? Show of hands. Half, roughly the half people, perfect. Who have heard of it? Who has not heard of Nagios? Let's do it like that. Awesome. It's been around too much, right? So Nagios, you can monitor IT infrastructure and a little bit more. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that if everybody knows it. So just for a demo setup, I came up, just pushed up a small OpenStack cluster with 3 nodes, 1 controller node, 2 compute nodes, and 1 Nagios server. So if anyone is familiar with like these graphics, you most likely know Ravello. So I kind of still use it for like demos or playground stuff like that. So even though it got bought by Oracle, I still use it. And yeah, basically what you need to do, you need to set up like the Nagios remote plugin executor on your controller and compute nodes. You need to set up your Nagios server, do some configuration. So basically you need to configure which servers you want to monitor and which checks the server should actually execute on those servers. And you have the possibility to define your own commands. So I, for example, just wrote a simple command for like Nova list, which actually just lists the number of VMs that are running in your OpenStack cluster. So you could also use that information in your Nagios dashboard. So pretty simple. So everything you can code in like a shell script or any other language, you can actually put into your Nagios monitoring. And here we're gonna jump into a short demo. Awesome, Ravello is down. So here you see the 4 hosts. No, you don't. Now you kind of do. There it is. Perfect. So here are the 4 hosts we were talking about. So you're familiar with the UI if you have worked with Nagios. Now I don't see it here. And yeah, basically you see your hosts are up, the ping is okay. And if we actually switch to the services screen, you get a little more information for about like the CPU resource utilization of each of the hosts, and also for the services. So for example, here you find the OpenStack instance count. Okay, 2 VMs running on that OpenStack cluster. And yeah, you can basically extend that to whatever you like. I think there are plenty of examples for Nagios plugins out there. And one example I want to share with you, which I found on GitHub, is actually a dashboard that just takes data from Nagios and kind of like drops the old UI and just like visualizes it in a more appealing way, I'd say. So this is something you could get out of Nagios, for example. Then there's more things to Nagios actually. So this is right now where we end with the free stuff of Nagios. So it's basically monitoring static entities. Though there is a way you could actually instrument the VMs as they are starting, you just would need to modify the Nova API code. So it's not, it's basically depends on what you want to do and if you want to do it. And you also have the possibility to like go into the paid version of Nagios, where you also have the possibility for log monitoring, which I never knew before. So the dollar bill just points out where you have to pay for. And yeah, if you want to know actually more about Nagios monitoring for OpenStack, there is a great talk from Nagios World 2014. I really recommend watching it if you just want to know more about that. as said before, the slides will be on SlideShare afterwards. All right. Next thing, Elastic. Who knows the Elk stack or Elastic stack? Also a lot of people. Not so really. But you've heard of it, right? Perfect. Okay, so it was previously known as the Elk stack. I think the company was called Elastic since the beginning, but it was called the Elk stack because the components that it consisted of are Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And now it's called the Elastic stack because they just added a few components and renamed some stuff. And it now consists still of Elasticsearch, which is like a data store where you can run very efficient queries on. It's still Kibana, which is like the visualization part of the Elk stack or the Elastic stack. And there is a new component called Beat, which is actually a, let's say, slimmed down version of Logstash. Don't know if you've heard of it. So some people learned something today by hearing about beats. Stacy's smiling. And we're gonna go into more details about beats in a second. And yeah, basically Logstash is still there, and there are two paid options. So there is XPack from Elastic, where you can actually get security modules, alerting modules, what previously known as Watcher. You get like machine learning components and reporting and graphs. And there is the cloud option, which actually means that Elastic hosts all of that for you, and you don't need to maintain it or run it on your own. So this is a usual architecture of how the Elastic stack looks like. You have an Elastic server where Kibana does the visualization of the data from the Elastic search, and you have Logstash or Beats pushing data into Elasticsearch. Pretty straightforward, right? So for my demo purposes, I went with Beats because it's pretty easy to set up. And as you can see, there are different types of data you could actually push to Elasticsearch using Beats. So there is one for log files, one for metrics, one for network data, one for uptime monitoring, and one for Windows log event monitoring. And yeah, let's just take a look at it in this example. So you're familiar with this architecture already, my small OpenStack cluster. And the server, which was previously running Nagios, now runs Elasticsearch and Kibana. And basically what I needed to do to make this running is set up and configure Elasticsearch, set up and configure Kibana, and point it to Elasticsearch so it knows where it can pull the data. Then set up and configure FileBeats. So FileBeats is the Beats module that is responsible for sending the log files to Elasticsearch. It's kind of like a replacement for Logstash, but it has not that much possibilities to modify data on the fly. So you can do really terrible things with Grok, with Logstash, if you want to, and you don't have that much possibilities with Beats, but it's easier to set up. So what you actually do in Beats, you just configure all of the log files you want monitored, configure where is your Elasticsearch, and there are some modules actually for FileBeats where FileBeats actually tags and analyzes the data in the log files already. So there are modules for Nginx, for Apache 2, for MySQL, so you don't need to parse everything on your own, which is pretty cool. And what I also did is I set up a second Beats module that is metric Beats, which pushes CPU utilization data, memory utilization data, and network data, and some file system information also to Elasticsearch so you can analyze it later on. And again, configure the output to Elasticsearch. Okay, let's take a look at that. So hopefully the next tab, yeah, Kibana, great. So this is the wrong index. So if I select the FileBeat index, which takes care of all of the log files, you see how many log files actually are coming in, and nobody's using actually that OpenStack cluster right now. So And what you actually get is a list of all of the log files, and you can like analyze it and graph it, visualize it. And I have done a pretty terrible job in visualization, but what I would actually like to show you is that not the whole screen is here? I can't seem to make it smaller. Wait a second. A little bit better. Okay, let's just move on to the dashboard. So I created one OpenStack dashboard, and it's not very sophisticated because